Hi, guys. Welcome to this really special episode of Kingdom Builders. I'm so happy that you're with us today, and I have a very special guest. This is my boyfriend, Logan, and we are going to dive into his faith journey. And it's a little bit different than other guests that we've had on the podcast, and that's very intentional. Most of our testimonies are people having a born again experience and coming from New Age to Jesus and discovering their faith. But I've been very fortified in my journey by walking beside this man who's been deep in his faith for many, many, many years and has accomplished insane levels of success in his particular area of passion and mission, which he's going to tell you about. And I think that you'll be really edified in your faith and have some breakthroughs listening to someone who's walked with God for so long. I know I have. So before we get into your full story, do you want to just tell everyone a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, definitely. To start off, my name is Logan Cunningham. I was born in Texas in a small town to two amazing parents that really taught me, I'd say everything I know and helped me discover and build the tools that would ultimately lead to me becoming an Olympian um, and achieving all the things that I had ever wanted to achieve really with my life at this time. So. Just a brief overview is I grew up in a small town in Texas. It's kind of a small town country boy that was just really excited to run fast from a young age. I was just so passionate with speed and I just wanted to show everybody how fast I was. So that translated to me obviously running track and field. I got out on the track and was just enthralled with everything, running, sprints, hurdles. And then I saw pole vaulting and it was immediately taken with pole vaulting as just the most incredible thing I've ever seen. So I had to try it immediately. Um, yeah, I tried it. I was completely wrapped up in it and that led me on a journey to high school to kind of build my name around athletics in high school, which enabled me to go get a college scholarship to Texas State. From there, I was able to go pro the uh, to make it to the Olympic trials in 2012, which really sparked a desire to continue training and push as hard as I could to make the Olympic team in 2016, which I did for Team USA. From there, I traveled the world as a high-level athlete for USA and for Nike, and traveled the world competing as a professional athlete for many years, where I retired and have since moved on to other endeavors, found my way in this world. So that's a brief overview of who I am.
Amazing. People often joke that it makes a lot of sense that we got together because the mindset and the fortitude and the level of craziness, basically, that you have to be to become an Olympic athlete and become an entrepreneur are very different paths, but very similar in terms of, yeah, just that inner character. So I think as you hear Logan talk, you'll see why it makes a lot of sense that the pro athlete and that route of accomplishing what so few people on the earth will ever accomplish is probably going to speak to you as a business owner. And yeah, I'd love to give you the floor to talk about your testimony and how you've managed to do such an incredible thing walking with Christ through it all.
Yeah, definitely. I've got my notes, so I'll start at the beginning and give you just like 20 minutes brief overview of kind of we could deep dive. Maybe we will later.
Yeah.
But for me, sports was the first thing that I loved, that I remember loving. It was the first thing that I think I knew that I loved, was specifically just running. I just loved to run. Sports has always been an outlet for me to express myself and to find my way in this world. And it was also through sports that I found my relationship with Jesus and built that on a very firm foundation of grit and integrity, hard work and discipline, and kind of all the things that I needed to make myself into who I was. I think it started with just a love, just a pure, genuine love, honestly, I was young, like a childlike love. You just love to do something. And that began to fuel a desire to push it. And that began to fuel a deep respect. And then that ultimately fueled a passion and obsession, which led me to the Olympics. So yeah, you have to be a little obsessed to do something like that. A little crazy, especially be a pole vaulter. They say you have to have a couple screws loose to pole vault. So yeah, so I started in middle school. I was doing track and field, and my dad took me to a track meet where we sat and watched every event, and he was like, which one do you want to do? You could do any of them. It could be whatever you want, to pole vault, you want to javelin, hurdles. So I watched pole vault, and I immediately knew that's what I wanted to do. We actually was fortunate to have pole vault at our middle school, and it was a seventh grade history teacher coached the pole vault, and it was actually like this really special thing. You had to try out. So we had like this multitude of events that we had to like actually physically do. You had to do handstands, backflips, climb ropes upside down, sprint, jump over stuff. And I think there was about 40 kids that tried out, and it came down to 4 of us that were, the best at it. The most athletic is essentially what he's trying to get, is the most athletic, fearless kids that he could find, because that's what it takes to be a good pole vaulter. And I loved that. So I just competed my heart out. And that was kind of the first taste of competition that I got for something that I really wanted. And I was selected to be on the team. So after that, we spent 2 years just learning the sport. And my dad was initially there, like every step of the way. He helped coach me. We were just figuring it out and just enjoying learning how to be an athlete, like learning how to compete, learning how to pole vault and actually like bend the pole and get flung off in the air and not die. And so from there, I think I broke every middle school record I could. And then I actually ended up getting qualifying for USA Nationals, or for USA, there's like AAU track is like junior nationals. So I actually ended up going to the regional meet, which was in San Antonio, which is where I got recruited by like my club coach, Glenn Dixon. Glenn Dixon ran a pole vault club in San Antonio, and he recruited me to come start training. So I started taking lessons my 8th grade summer. From that summer, I ended up jumping like 2 feet higher than I'd ever had. So I came into my freshman year of high school, jumping just as high, if not higher, than all the seniors in high school. And so so I loved that. I was just like on top of the world. Um, got the district record, one district, regional record, one regionals. Um, didn't make it to state freshman year, but that initial fire, like getting those early victories under my belt, was so critical in developing me and, making me want more and more. So that took me on a journey through high school, like just developing who I was as an athlete, just having fun. I never really wanted to be an Olympian at that point in my life. I always thought like I'd be too nervous, or that it was just too scary or too far away. I genuinely was just falling in love with the sport and with competing and with being an athlete. And so that just all snowballed and led me to getting a college scholarship. I was recruited to uh, a couple different schools, some that I really wanted to go to. I ended up going to Texas State on a full ride, and I was able to negotiate kind of like my situation, where it would be Glenn's his daughter, Brooklyn, who went to Texas State, that she would be my pole vault coach, and then I would be trained by the actual like sprint coach there. And so I landed at Texas State with a just a clear path of being an athlete. I don't know that I would have really gone to college if I hadn't got a scholarship. So I think that that was a major step looking back for me in my growth as a person. Um, During that time, I was going through a lot of transitions. I had I had gotten baptized in the Guadalupe River, which is a very Texan thing to do in high school, and that's when I really started making my faith my own. I grew up in the church. I grew up with loving parents, but I never really understood what it meant for that to be my faith and how that applied to these like facets of my life that were becoming so independent. And it was a chance to make it my own. So I really dove into the Bible. I studied the Bible from cover to cover. I was learning what it meant to talk about Jesus with my friends, the friends I was finding in college. I got involved with campus ministry. And my freshman year was really pivotal, I think, for me in a lot of ways. It set up the foundation for my athletic journey. I remember having this really crazy dream where I was wandering around the halls of a school, just feeling lost, like this deep feeling of just absolutely being lost. And I was wandering around, just kind of following this presence that I felt, and it ultimately led me to this room. And when I opened the door, I immediately felt just a flood of love and peace and joy just like flood over me. So it's like this contrast of emotions of it complete being lost, all of a sudden being filled with the most amazing peace, love, and joy that I've ever felt. And I walked in the room and there was a figure there. And he pretty much just hugged me. And then that was it. That was the dream. So I never really knew what that meant until I got further down my college career at Texas State, where I kind of started getting more into sports, less into church. I didn't really I didn't really know like what I was doing, and I started to feel that feeling of being lost. I was on the track. I would get on the runway, and everything would just be black. I couldn't focus. I couldn't concentrate. I was overwhelmed with fear, with doubt, with really just this like incapacity to like actually perform. And it was overwhelming. And I started to just my performance tanked. I actually took like last place at conference twice, indoor, outdoor. They yanked my scholarship, dropped me down to like a fraction of what I was on. And so I really was at a point where I just wanted to quit. And that kind of led me to discover the initial like foundation of my psychology and what pushed me to get back in touch with my spiritual roots. Because my sophomore year, I knew I was like, I want to still do this. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Everything was just not working. And I was kind of at my first like rock bottom in life where I couldn't do the thing I loved. My scholarship was about to be gone, and I was just needing to figure it out. And I really found this place. I read this book. It was like basic sports psychology. And the first concept I learned was to take out the trash. And the trash was in my mind. Everything that I didn't need was harmful to me. The fear, the doubt, hesitations. And I learned to just empty my mind of these things. And it came from a place of being grateful. I just started to show up every day and thank God that I was here. Thank God that I had this ability, and be thankful for the opportunity to give everything I had, even if the outcome wasn't what I wanted. So I started to build on this foundation of just showing up and being thankful, being grateful. And I learned that to truly be great, you have to first be grateful. And that's what it really meant to be full of greatness, was to be grateful. And that came from my belief and my faith in God, of just the simplicity of showing up and being thankful for what God has given me, and thankful for the talents that He's given me. Thankful for the mind, for my body, and for all these things that like I really just am blessed to have. And that started to chip away at this like paralyzing inability. And at the same time, I was meeting one of my best friends, and I was getting tied back in with Fellowship of Christian Athletes. He told me one thing that stuck with me for the rest of my career. And he said, before you were meant to be an Olympic pole vaulter or jump 18 feet or achieve these athletic goals, you were meant to be a light in this dark world. Before you meant to do any of that, you were meant to be a light in this dark world. And so that really reframed my focus and my thought process on it's not just something that I've been chasing after. And that was a pivotal moment for me because that's what shifted me from just doing something I loved and just loving it to like, this is actually a calling. Like I feel God's calling on my life and I feel this call to be a professional athlete. And so um, that's when I started choosing to like move forward with this. So those like building blocks led me into a really successful career, a really successful season at Texas State. For the rest of my time there, um, I started to choose to believe in myself and choosing to believe in myself more than what was common or acceptable or even realistic, but to like daily make this choice to believe in myself and to believe that I could do this. And over that time, he's like solidifying this calling, and I was feeling it more and more. And so I started to get really good at pole vault. And then in 2012, season rolls around, it's Olympic year, and I know that I want to try to make the Olympic trials. So I made that my goal. I trained as hard as I could, and I ended up I jumped 18 foot for the first time, and I made the Olympic trials in 2012. So the top 24 in the nation get to go to the Olympic trials. There's two competitions, one qualifying, one finals. At qualifiers, the top 12 advance to finals, and then the top 3 from finals continue to the Olympics. So in 2012, I made it. It was a dream come true. Unfortunately, it was rained out, so only like the elite guys that had a lot of experience actually made finals. Like half the field no high didn't get a mark. But it created in me this fire and this like spark that I knew that I wanted to continue on and push and dedicate my life for the next 4 years to making the Olympic team. And so that led me down this journey of my faith just lining up and syncing up with my journey in athletics, all these things that I chose to believe, leading me through injuries, trusting the process, learning that the chasing gold is not the end result, but that actually the journey is more important than the end. Learning that my relationship to God is part of that journey, and that God isn't just wanting me to be an amazing athlete, but that he wants to develop me as a person. I went through my own trials of injury, of getting kicked off of my training facilities, and all the while diving into like James chapter 1, where it says, consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because the testing of your faith develops perseverance. And basically perseverance is what I was after, and perseverance is what I achieved. So that was the block of years where I actually became the Olympian. I hadn't done it yet, but I had started to believe in myself so deeply that I actually was an Olympian before I made the team. I had actually already had my Olympic trials. I had gone through all the trials that had made me into the Olympian before actually doing it. And I just had this crazy idea and thought, and I just knew that I was going to make the team. And that really was kind of a strange place to be, where I was just so full of faith and also uncertainty. But I had made a decision in my heart that I wanted to be completely wrecked at the end of the day, on July 4th, 2016, when I competed for the Olympic team. I didn't want there to be any excuse that I didn't make the team. In fact, the only excuse that I felt was acceptable was not, I should have trained harder, or maybe I could have dieted, or maybe I could have slept more, or if I had just worked out or pushed a little bit differently. The only excuse that I felt was acceptable was that I just wasn't good enough. That's the only reason I was okay with not making this team. I'm just not good enough. I showed up and gave it my all, and somebody was better. They just beat me because I just wasn't good enough. And I wanted to do that because I was inspired by the story of Jesus. He showed up every day. He gave his full presence. He didn't hold anything back for the next day. He didn't reserve anything for himself. He put it all on the line. He gave all of him, and it was fully required that he do so. And I felt that that call in my life, it was a full requirement that I give my everything, that every day I learn to lay down my life for this journey, for my purpose, and to, as they say, pick up my cross and follow after him. And I wanted to practice that with athletics. And so I did. And so to kind of summarize, the full picture is my journey was not just my story. It wasn't just something that I wanted. It was actually something, it was actually just as much God's story that he was writing in me, because that was, while my mindset was I'm doing everything I can, and at the end of the day, if I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. I showed up on July 4th, 2016, and I wasn't good enough. I was, I actually had given everything I had, and my third attempt at this 565, I missed, and I was out of the competition. It was completely out of my control whether I made the team or not. I was out of the competition, and there was one guy left. Two guys had made the bar, one guy had not. If he makes this next bar, he goes to the Olympics, and I don't. And so I watched him take 3 attempts at this bar and miss every single one. And it was just like a full circle moment for me, because I had given my everything. And at the end of the day, it wasn't good enough. But you know what? God filled the gaps, because it wasn't just my story, it was also his story. And he filled the gaps between like where I fell short and where he wanted me to, where he brought me up to. And so that's kind of the overview of my Olympic journey of becoming an Olympian, and how it tied into my spiritual journey. Like becoming an Olympian made me a spiritual man, and it deepened my faith in every way possible. In the same way that deepening my faith with God made me an Olympian. I can't disconnect those two. From there, I was able to travel the world. I was already a professional athlete, but I ultimately was able to achieve everything that I ever wanted to do with this sport, and to enjoy it with all of my heart, because I wasn't just doing it for me, but I was also doing it for because I believed it was God's calling on my life.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. I would love to ask you about that last piece that you just started speaking into around like how Jesus and the gospel is really about filling in the gaps of where we fall short. And I know you've shared that with me on some occasions where like I had decisions to make or things going on in my life, and I really wanted to rise to a certain occasion or be a certain type of person, and I just couldn't in my humanness, and I was just falling short, and my faith helped to like get me to become that version of myself. Can you just say more about that to people so they really understand? I think this will help deepen people's understanding of the gospel too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like people that may have, I had a stigma around professional athletes and Olympians. I always thought like they were these superheroes that were just like capable of anything. Whatever they thought they could do, they did it. And like my journey to becoming that was the farthest from the truth. It's actually, I'm just a man that has struggled deeply and persevered to no ends, and is uncommonly stubborn to achieve this goal. And it was actually like the daily practice of pushing myself to my absolute limit, like to the ends of me, and like that's not fun. You realize how much of a human you really are. Like I realize how limited I really am. Like I can't train. Like I couldn't train past a certain limit. I would just get hurt. I couldn't, believe in myself past a certain limit. I was just incapable of it. So yeah, I came to the end of my abilities like every single day. And that's what you have to do to achieve these great things is like I pushed to the absolute limits of my personal ability. I went until I couldn't go anymore. And then I watched myself be a human. And then I trusted God to lead me further and to help give me the strength to do it again the next day. And I think that is the story of the gospel is that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. We could do everything that we can to save ourselves or to become a good human or a good person. Like that's amazing, but it only takes us so far. At the end of the day, we are limited. We're just humans. We're finite beings that we can't control everything. We're not all seeing. We're not the God of the universe. And so, yeah, like my gospel story was every day, like realizing I'm just a human. I'm just a man that is just in pursuit of this crazy idea. Um, and I think that like Jesus, I was just so inspired by Jesus, uh, because that's what he did too. He's just a man, that was a supernatural human that did what we couldn't do.
What would you have to say about, like, you've taught me a lot about the difference between religion and relationship, and you have a healthy skepticism of the church and, like, organized
Yeah,
religion. Can you just say more? Because I think that's a piece that a lot of our listeners will really relate to.
yeah,
Can you say more about the difference between just, and even maybe the difference between what you experienced growing up Christian versus when you actually stepped into, no, I have this personal relationship and I'm wondering when was the moment you really gave your life to Christ, actually? Because sometimes when we just grow up in the church, you're, following the rules of the household that you live in, or following the tradition of your family and going to youth group because it's fun and you have around like-minded kids. Or what was that moment? And maybe was it that dream or was it something else? And then what has it been like? What does it feel like? And what do you do to be in relationship with Jesus?
yeah.
And what are you laughing? Is a really hard
That's a
question.
lot of questions.
It is a lot of questions. Okay, I'll let you just go with that much.
Yeah.
There's so many things I want to know.
Okay. I think that pivotal moment for me, because I believe I was saved at a young age. I did believe in Jesus. I trusted Jesus as my savior. But there's a difference between salvation and sanctification. Like just because you believe and you're saved as a Christian, that doesn't mean that you are committed to a lifestyle of pursuing Jesus, where you are, as they call being discipled, like you're a disciple of Jesus, a follower of Jesus. And so that story started for me in high school, but really began to take roots and become real to me in college. When I made that decision, I was looking around at all my church friends thinking these guys are just living in the same safety net little church bubble that I grew up in, and I'm sick of it. And it's fake. And I felt, and I know it's not, but that's how I felt. For me, it was just so like it wasn't authentic to me. And I wanted to do the real thing. I wanted to actually find out what that meant. And that like correlated with my journey in sports because I didn't want to just tell people that I was training for the Olympics. Like I actually wanted to make the Olympics. And there's a big difference between just wanting to say, yeah, I'm doing this cool thing, or actually wanting to do it and like to actually get it done. And so that was my journey. That was my, I think, pivotal moment with my spiritual walk too, because I didn't want to live under in a cave. I didn't want to live in a spiritual bubble or a Christian bubble. I wanted to take risks. I'd rather be out there living in the world, testing and figuring out my faith. in real life than to hold back and live a sheltered life. And so that's what really changed it for me. And that's when I started getting out in the world, being like, and that's what it made it my own. And I think that's when I started learning like the hard life lessons that made me who I am, like making mistakes and like getting hitting rock bottoms, getting, beat down in like sports and spiritual life and just life in general. And then having to trust God that I was on the right path. So,
what does that relationship element really feel like to you? Or how do you practice being in a relationship with Jesus for yourself?
yeah, it's hard because like initially you just believe that there's a God out there that loves you, that has a great plan for you. And then you're like, okay, sounds good. And then and then you got to actually go test it out and like test that faith and go live. And so that's what I was doing. Like that relationship became real when I tested it, when I ran into walls, when I ran into hard times, when I faced those trials and tribulations, like it tested my faith. And when I persevered, and I learned that this faith in God, this trust in God, this daily praying, this daily surrendering my heart, opening my heart to God's plans, um, was actually leading me through like a river of water, of life water that was taking me around these obstacles, breaking down others, and carving this path in my life where I look back on it. And I see that all the decisions that I made that were based off of that relationship and that faith and that belief have only led me peace, joy, have only led me down a great road and made my life better in so many ways. So I think that's the relationship piece of it, is like it takes time to build any relationship. It's taken time to build our relationship. It's not like an instantaneous thing that just happens, but it is a daily decision. And that was my parallel. Like my daily decision to wake up and think about and choose, how can I become the best athlete in the world today? What can I surrender today? How can I work hard and strategically position myself to take down these 1% every day that would add up to achieving this huge dream? It's the same with my faith, my walk with faith. Like, how can I surrender myself to this faith, to work hard to take down these ideals, to live like Jesus lived, and to just develop this peace, this relationship with Jesus? So I don't know if that really answers all
Yeah,
of those questions, but
it did. Oh, yeah. What is coming to mind is, I know a perception I had of Christians before I became one was this idea of Christianity being kind of rigid and people who follow Jesus not being very empowered, let's say. And I've heard from skeptics in my circles that when they look at people who are coming to Jesus now, they have this perception or this idea of you, you know, not those people not being empowered by following a established religion, let's say. But I look at someone like you who is very empowered, who's accomplished something that you were in the amongst the best in the world at the thing that you were passionate about,
mhm.
and were very successful and have accomplished a lot of other really amazing things. Logan's also a helicopter pilot. uh, you
That's
what
right.
would you what would you say to those people to challenge their idea of actually, no, the most empowering thing you can do is walk with the King of Kings?
Yeah,
To
yeah.
like how to be Christian and be empowered at the same time.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, so I would like to clarify, religion and relationship are two totally different things. So maybe that's confusion for a lot of people, is viewing Christianity as a religion, but Jesus actually came to destroy that notion of Christianity as a religion. Jesus came to this earth to create a relationship and to reestablish relationship with God, which was broken. We weren't able to have that before Jesus. there was religion before Jesus and there's religion after Jesus. But Jesus came to establish a relationship, and that's a dynamic, ever-changing thing. Relationships can empower you. Relationships can motivate you. They can grow you and make you into a better person. But they can also give you a calling on your life where religion doesn't necessarily do that. But like one of the things that I truly believed and grew into believing as I was training for the Olympics was like as I felt this just deep call, this like burning passion to do pole vault, right? To like, pursue this goal. I believed fully that God put that in my heart before I was even created. Um, I believe that God has put seeds of passions and desires in our hearts as things that He has for us to accomplish in this life. It's up to us to recognize those and to search them out and to actually take steps to fulfill them. I think that's empowerment. I think that's Jesus giving us the desires of our heart already planted in there, and then giving us the tools and the freedom, the free will to like go and do it. And I believe that when we acknowledge that those things that we feel called to do and we take steps of action towards that, I believe that He paves the way, He rewards that because it's also His dream. It's not just our dream. And so I would say that's the most empowering type of relationship that we can have with a God that has planted seeds. And it's like, think of the most fun that you could ever have, the thing that you enjoy doing the most, that was probably given to you by God, or like a passion to like for your career, for like flying helicopters. I love flying. I believe that passion was put in my heart before I was made, and it's my joy to search it out and to cultivate that and to take it to the furthest level that I can. Um, yeah.
What advice do you have for, our podcast is primarily new believers or,
Yeah.
people who've been in the faith and then maybe gone on and lived their life and lived a secular life or been in the new age and then had this like, born again experience or coming back to Jesus experience. What would you say? And you've been dating a new believer for the last like 4 or 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you feel is the best thing as someone who's been walking in the faith for decades and decades? What do we need to do to deepen that relationship with Christ?
Yeah. Like it doesn't matter how long you've been walking with Jesus. There's only one thing that matters with Christianity. It's not reading your Bible. It's not going to church. It's not being in a small group. It's maintaining your personal relationship with Jesus at all costs. That's it. Yes, all those other things are good to do, and they do help you maintain your relationship. But if there's one thing that is the end all be all, it's maintain your relationship with Jesus Christ. This is the first commandment: love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And then the next commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. That's what we are created for: is deep intimacy and connection with God and with others. But that's what humans, I believe, are created for, is like that deep connection and intimacy. Like we crave it and we can have it. And so but I believe that there's so many things that get in the way of that. That even like trying to be a Christian, like trying to do all these things can get in the way of actually like just calming your mind, quieting your heart, having your presence with God. Like that is the gospel, is that Jesus created a relationship that we could have with the God of the universe, that we could spend time together and like actually be known, to know and to be known, to love and to be loved. That's what we all want, and we can have that. And so that's the one thing that we really have to do, we need to do to be deeply fulfilled.
Yeah. I get a daily reminder of that being with this man, and it's been so important in my walk, being such a new believer. And it's interesting what you're saying about the relationship piece too, because God as a triune being has relationship at the core of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And because we're created in His image, we're created to be these deeply relational beings. And as I've been diving into the Bible, it's seemingly story after story of God's desire to be in relationship with us and to pursue us
Yeah.
and to build us up and be close to us, his immense love story for us. And that just came to mind as you were sharing.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna do a couple of episodes because we have so much to talk about. I'd love to share about our relationship and other like more personal things about us in another episode. But I'm sure some people listening to this are curious. I'm curious, what's it been like for you to be with a new believer? What have you experienced watching me get saved and go through all these changes? How has it affected your faith, maybe? Or inspired you at some level? Or what do you think about this? Just like all my friends that you're meeting who are having these radical experiences with God moving in our lives in such a huge way.
Yeah, I love it. It's inspiring in a lot of ways. I won't say, mm, tomorrow is the 20 years to the day that I got baptized, actually, which is crazy. And yeah, my relationship with God is it's been that a relationship. It's been good and bad and ebbed and flowed, and I've loved him, I've not loved him, I've doubted, I've feared, I've grown, I've fallen away, I've come back, I've every day he's met me there and he's met me where I'm at. And even the days and weeks that I have just been like, I don't want to do this anymore and I'm done. And then come back to him, he's been right there. And so I think that's the coolest thing to see is with any believer, but especially the new believers, is just God showing up for y'all right where you're at, in whatever situation you're in, wherever you're at, whatever crazy thing you're thinking, not that crazy, but whatever, wherever you're coming from, like whatever your philosophy has been or is changing into, or your the psychology, what you're believing, even just like the habits of your daily habits, like I see God meeting y'all there, each and every one of you, and each and every one of your places, in like the quiet places of your heart. And I think that's just motivating and inspiring for me because it's um it's just a reminder because I look back on my life and I see it reminds me of all the times that God has just met me where I was at when I didn't want to wake up and love him or love others, and when I was just sick of it, or when I was just hurt and broken and feeling beat down and torn up and like I couldn't move forward, and God meeting me there. So yeah, it's really amazing to see that's just how God works. No matter where you're at, he meets you there. You could be on the farthest end of the spectrum from him, running the complete opposite direction from God, and he'll still meet you right there. It doesn't matter where you're at. You could be full on running towards God. He'll still meet you there and be like, let's go. And that's amazing. I think that's incredible.
Thank you. I think that's the perfect note to end on. And thank you for sharing your story and sharing your wisdom. You guys probably can sense what I see in this man, why I'm so crazy about him, and actually getting to be stewarded in my faith and to get to experience your wisdom. And like, I feel like God has spoken to me through you so many times in so many ways. And I hope that the listeners today, I hope you guys got some hits of what that Holy Spirit working through Logan is like and got some wisdom, inspiration for your journey, your passion, your calling, and your walk with Jesus, and hearing it from a really grounded perspective of someone who's done incredible things and has walked with him in these ways that I find really inspiring. I aspire to walk with God in the way that you do, Logan. So thank you for being here, and listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for having me.